Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
And we have made the journey back down the M1, James. We are in North London.
That's debatable, isn't it? Come on.
I've
got nothing around. This happens every year. People get annoyed with me. I don't really care. Our Arsenal correspondent, Adam Pritchard, is in. How are you, Adam?
I'm doing well, thanks, James. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you, mate. As I just said to you off camera, I woke up Sunday morning and realised there's a lot of people I follow that I shouldn't because my timeline was full of Arsenal going to win the league. Can you confirm if that's true or not?
Yeah, actually, it's happening. It's definitely happening. No reason why that would go wrong at all.
That's getting clipped.
That's going to be the intro now, is it?
It is, mate.
I wouldn't worry that there's enough sarcasm in your voice that we get that you don't think it's actually realistic.
No.
But this is probably the most optimistic you've been going into a season in a while, surely.
Probably, yeah. I suppose there was some maybe going into Arteta's first full season, albeit there was a bit of kind of pandemic haze around that. There was probably the excitement of the unknown because we didn't really know what we were getting. Obviously, we'd had a bit of a season with him in charge, but I think his first full season, there was a little bit more excitement to see where he can really kind of take the team going forward. But yeah, no, I think the signings we've made are a signal of intent and in a way apply quite a lot of pressure to both Arteta and the club that this season should definitely be an improvement on the last one.
You said this time last year, Adam, that if you ended up finishing fourth, it would be kind of in spite of the other teams because they weren't good enough. Does it feel the opposite of that now, though? That actually, if you did come up short and finished fifth, it might be because it's difficult to break into the top four, rather than this time last year, it felt like an open house for fourth, potentially.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Obviously, you never know how a season is going to play out, sort of with the various nuances that go on as it sort of unfolds. But yeah, I think we're certainly in a strong enough position to finish fourth on merit without needing a Chelsea or a Tottenham, because realistically, those are the only two that we're close to, without needing either one of those two clubs to kind of drop off. And I think that is probably the main reason for that is the business we've done in the summer. We've really addressed the key problem areas, which is, it felt like the first time in a while we've gone into a summer window with sort of main positions in mind for reinforcement and got them out of the way before the season has started.
Let's start with Jesus then. Is this the long-standing answer to the problem up front? Or has there not been a problem?
There has been a problem of goal scoring. It just depends on whether you define that as the problem of the kind of striker or the players around them. So I don't think Jesus is going to score 20 goals this season. I think what he'll probably do is be a 15 goal, 15 assist kind of player. But what I think he should allow is the players around him to score more goals. So I think you'll see a lot more production out of Martinelli this season. I think I'm hoping to see a lot more production out of Martin Odegaard as well. And I think Saka showed last season what he is capable of in a struggling attack at times. He had the attack on his back for most of the season. And I think taking a little bit of that weight off him will just sort of further allow him to flourish and kind of produce more end product.
Jesus in for you, Suj?
Yeah, and I mean, you went from saying he's not going to score 20 goals to 15 goals, 15 assists.
30%. That'll do for 8 million. Yeah.
For me, he is going to. I think he's got a very strong chance of clocking up 20 goals this season. He'll be the real focal point. Lacazette had his moments last season, but he's not a focal point, but ball in the back of the net type striker like Jesus. He's a link-up player. And you certainly have the quality in behind to put it on a plate for Jesus and Saka, Odegaard, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, the new boy Vieira. Like, you've got enough creative players to put it on a sixpence for him. That's why I can't see myself starting without Jesus and that price. I mean, 8 million. It's a steal.
Yeah, listen, I said to you on the pod the day before the prices come out, and we hadn't had a price for him. And I said, if he drops at 8.5, it might bust the game a bit. He dropped to 8, and it was like, oh, wow. That's, you've got like Calvert-Lewin at the same price and stuff.
Yeah, he's not leaving. He's not leaving my squad.
Is he in for you, Adam?
Barring injury, of course.
I was going to say no, because he's not in my side. And to be honest, I haven't really, he was in my first kind of draft that you do just to see how everything shapes up. But since then, I haven't really had him in too many, to be honest. And I realise we
need an explanation here, mate, because the majority of people, we know that from the numbers, do have him in their team.
62.8% ownership is mental.
Yeah, no, and I completely understand the reasons for it. I think there's a couple of, at least, things in my mind that have meant I'm not going to go with him. And I'm pretty confident I won't go with him at the start of the season. It's not that I don't think he'll do well. I think I've said to you, James, kind of offline, that I think Arsenal will probably lose the opening game. And there's already
night game.
Exactly. I think it's going to be
2-1.
2-1 to Crystal Palace. It's nailed on. Put a 10 on it now. But there's a little bit of kind of emotional hesitation to overly invest in Arsenal in FPL in an opening game, which I think will lose. But look, putting that to one side, I just think there are better value options elsewhere for Arsenal. I think I mentioned Martinelli earlier. I think him at 6 million is just it's ridiculous value. I think Saka at 8 million also represents probably better value than Jesus. And I think Zinchenko as well at 5 million. I think he's great value. So if I were to pick 3 Arsenal players, those would be my 3. And then you kind of have Jesus, who, while certainly is a good option, he's kind of isolated in that 8 million region. And my current setup, for my side, I just have one striker up front. I don't know if the 8 million forward being Jesus is a better value than the great kind of 8 million mid options out there.
Can just out of interest ask who that forward is?
It's Kane at the moment.
Okay. It's an interesting one because the pushback on it, you've kind of already said out of your own mouth, 30 potential attacking returns. I mean, do you think Saka gets 30?
30 might have been a bit generous. But yeah, I think he'll do well. I think he'll have a great season. And I have no doubt he will score a lot of points for people. But I mean, there are so many players that are going to, you can say that about you could say that about Raheem Sterling. I won't have him in my side. You could say that about Haaland. I've just said I won't have him in my side. I think the extra clean sheet point for the midfielders and the extra points for the goals is what sways me towards them. And also, if Jesus doesn't work at 8 million, you're then in the position of, well, what do I do with this? Do I take money elsewhere to move him up to Vardy, or do I drop down to Ollie Watkins? I suppose it's an option, but it's not one that particularly appeals to me.
Might be further by the time you've come to make that decision. I mean, let's say blanks first too, Jesus, which is possible. They're not the easiest fixtures, Palace and Leicester, respectively. Then it's Bournemouth, Fulham. You're not really coming off with them too. Let's say at that point you do go, right, he's blanked in the 4. I can't have this anymore. I want to get away. Even though Villa, you still got Villa, United, Everton, Brentford, and the next 4 is decent. But let's say you decide after Fulham, right, 4 blanks enough. I want to come off. You've got switches there like with Solanke or something, where you can come down to 2 million there and then pump that somewhere else into the team. So I think the fact that he's above, the difference I find between the two of them, there are so many alternatives to Saka in that position at that price. And Saka may well prove to be the best one, by the way. With Jesus, it's just him, and I can come down if I need to. That's how I feel about it. My original instinct was I might wildcard in game week 3, and therefore I don't want to start with Jesus. And I think at the moment, that's the only way I don't, is if I really think I'm going to wildcard in 3, in which case he comes in then.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I'm perfectly leaving myself open to an early wildcard, and I don't really have any kind of issues with that. But it's interesting you say that Jesus being the only option is almost what attracts you to him, because that's what puts me off. I'm trying to think about it as having an escape, like a kind of break glass in case of emergency option. And I don't really like the other forwards outside the kind of heavy hitters. Whereas if Saka doesn't work out, or if another 8 million midfielder doesn't work out, I can just hop over to Maddison. I can drop down a little bit to Sancho if I need. I can go over to Mount. It's the amount of options there appeals to me a lot more.
Does value play any part in your decision? Because obviously at 63% ownership, it can only really go one way. If he doesn't do well in the first couple of weeks, James, in your early wildcard, you might be picking him up cheaper than 8 million.
Could do.
but
then if he performs well in those first two, and then you've got Bournemouth, Fulham. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't lie. It's a scary thought. But then again, I've said this to a few of my friends. This is where the fan and the FPL head kind of conflict a little bit. If Jesus scores a hat trick on the opening day, I'm going to be really happy. I'm not going to be upset that I don't own him. So I think it's probably a little bit easier for me to make that decision.
I hope I get him and he gets a -1.
Well, yeah,
sell him. So. Great.
But then I'm quite happy having. So I've got 2 Arsenal players at the moment. I've got Zinchenko and Martinelli, and I'm quite happy with them as a kind of share of attack and defence. Because I think Martinelli, and we might come onto this later, I think Martinelli will start the season. And so, yeah, I just think it's 6 million, a route into a top 5 attack is too difficult to pass up.
I think if Jesus was 9 or 9.5, he'd still be a strong consideration for me. And I'm not sure that and it might be a weakness, I'm not sure I can get over that. The fact that I'd even hypothesized that a weak price of 8.5 would blow the game, and he came in at 8. It just looks too good. He's capable of winning the Golden Boot, Adam. He's capable of getting well in excess of 200 points if he and yourselves do really well.
I don't think he'll win the Golden Boot. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Like I've been saying the whole time, I don't think he won't do well. I just think that value-wise, I think there are better options in Arsenal elsewhere.
Right, remove the fantasy for a minute. How do you see him fitting in to the team? It's one concern, maybe. I've heard some say, look, Nketiah's going to want minutes. Are we looking at the potential where Jesus may play wide in certain games? Or do you foresee it that Jesus is regularly going to play through the middle and Nketiah will probably get his starts in the Europa League?
I think most of the time it will be Jesus through the middle. And in our last pre-season game against Chelsea, we lined up with as full a strength side as I can think we'll have. And Jesus played the middle. Martinelli played on the left and Saka played on the right. And it was the link-up play that Jesus has already formed in quite a short space of time between the other kind of attacking components that makes me think he'll start as a centre forward. But there is also the option for him to play alongside Nketiah. I think that I can't remember when that happened, but there was definitely a pre-season game where for sort of 30 minutes or so they played as 2 air quotes traditional strikers together.
We're talking about a 4-4-2 essentially.
Sort of, yeah. But again, the way Arsenal system works is that it was quite fluid. But essentially, yeah, and they linked up very, very well together. I think it was Nuremberg, a friendly we played in Germany. They linked up quite nicely together. And a lot of Jesus, I think that was Jesus' first start, and he scored a couple of goals. And a lot of his positioning was down the middle. So I think whether he nominally starts on the right or the left shouldn't be too much of a concern for people, A, because I don't think it will happen that often realistically, and B, there's so much fluidity in those kind of front 3 positions that he'll occupy the box as often as anyone, I think.
Nothing you say puts me off getting him, mate.
No, I know. I'm kind of selling him to you. I realise that, but you
think you want to sell him to yourself, mate? I think.
I don't know. I might consider it, but yeah, I think, like I was saying, I do think there are kind of other better value options elsewhere because the attack is so fluid, and I think the output for everybody in that attack will increase. So if we're thinking Saka was a great option last year. I think he'll do better than he did last year. So if anything, that makes him a more appealing option to me.
Sell us Zinchenko, because I'm really surprised to see you go with him at 5 million. You've got other defenders at 5 million. You've even got good options at 4.5 at Arsenal. My question is really, do you see him playing as a midfielder more than a defender? Is that influencing your decision on wanting to go with him?
I think he'll start the season at left back because Kieran Tierney's kind of struggling coming back from his injury.
Shock, surprise.
Yeah, I was going to say. And Kieran Tierney's going to be injured at least 3 or 4 more times throughout the course of the season. So I'm sure he'll play I'm sure he'll play sort of 10 games there for us in the league over the season. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And Tomiyasu, is worth noting, is also kind of struggling coming back from an injury. So that would most likely, in my mind, see Ben White move over to right back, meaning in the world where Arsenal have one fullback who kind of bombs on and one who is more reserved, Zinchenko will be the one bombing on. And in the friendly I mentioned against Chelsea, he looked very, very sharp. And I know you can't put too much stock into pre-season friendlies, but he looks very, very very integrated and very connected to the players around him for somebody who's only been with the squad for a matter of days. To your point, or to your question rather, about where I see him playing over the course of the season, I think he's a much better kind of left 8 than he is a left back. I'm not too enamored with his kind of defensive stats and the defensive side of his game. I think he just brings so much in terms of ball progression and passing that Xhaka can't do, especially the close control, the quick feet, the kind of technical ability he has is really impressive. I think a lot of the City players have said he's one of the most, or he was one of the most technically gifted in their squad. So yeah, I think almost playing him at left back as his main position would be a little bit of a waste of his potential. And I don't think it's what he wants either. I think he might have moved to Arsenal and had a chat with Arteta with a mind of, yeah, you're going to get your chance in midfield like you play and captain your country.
It's harsh to judge City defenders ever because they only let the opposition have the ball for about 5 minutes a game. So he's literally hardly has to do much defensive work. But I do agree with you. I think a number of clubs had their eye on Zinchenko, and a lot of them were thinking about him playing further forward. But if he was a left-sided 8, like you mentioned, at 5 million as a defender, I'd definitely be interested. I didn't click on the little eye and see his ownership, but I haven't seen any drafts with him. 6.6%
now.
He's 6.6%. It's way higher than I thought it would be.
Well, you got to remember that was 0 a week ago as well, right?
Yeah, as well. So he's priced well at 5 million. I think he's definitely as viable as an option as Tierney, who he can't keep himself fit.
I mean, he has to be more viable than Tierney. Unfortunately, I really rate Kieran Tierney, but this injury record just keeps coming back around. It looks like he's not going to be fit for game week 1. So I think Adam's right. In the ideal scenario for Arsenal, Tierney's fit and Zinchenko sits in that kind of left 8 position that we saw Xhaka play more and more towards the second half of that season. But when Tierney's not available, it makes sense that he probably slots in there. I don't suppose, Adam, you want to be seeing too much of Nuno Tavares, is probably my guess, or Cedric covering at left back. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, and there's talk that Tavares is going to go out on loan somewhere with an option to buy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think his Arsenal time is done, to be honest.
I think Zinchenko is worth paying the extra over the other 4.5s. It feels to me, and therefore you're comparing him to Matty Cash, Kieran Trippier. That's now the debate you're beginning to have, rather than with other Arsenal players. I think, is that fair, Adam? Would he, in your opinion, be worth paying extra over White, for example?
Yeah, definitely. And the reason why he edges the likes of kind of Cash out for me is the potential that he's out of position. If you think baseline, you're getting an attacking fullback from Arsenal at 5 million. That in of itself is a good player to look at. then you factor in, okay, he could be playing in essentially the left-hand side equivalent to what Martin Odegaard plays, then that makes him even more valuable.
I've got a 5 million defender in my squad at the moment as a placeholder, though, in the sense of it depends whether he moves. And I've got Cucurella in. If Cucurella moves to City for 5 million, I can't overlook that, to be honest with you. But if he doesn't make that move, then I might be looking to reconsider what I do with that spot. And if I stick with the 5 million midfielder, then I think Zinchenko definitely throws his hat in the ring as one that I would look at. But I've got all fingers crossed here for Cucurella to move, because I think that is his replacement, Zinchenko's replacement there would be the one to go to.
Yeah, I've got cash over Zinchenko at the moment, in all honesty. But it's just a first couple for Villa. I think they've probably got the first two. And it's something we can go with, I think, personally. But it's close. Like if someone says, I'm going Zinchenko over Cash or Trippier or even Gabriel, is it definitely Zinchenko over Gabriel for you, Adam?
It is, but I mean, I know Gabriel has a good kind of aerial threat. He scored against Leicester. He scored against Leicester last season. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Palace have a bit of an issue.
Palace and Leicester both have defensive set piece.
Yeah, so those aren't at all too bad fixtures for him, and you certainly know he's going to start. So I don't mind that if you just want to have him in there and not worry about Tierney potentially coming back and Zinchenko maybe being rested for the odd game. But I think to start the season, Zinchenko just about edges it for me.
Where does Saliba fit into this? Not necessarily from an FPL perspective. Where does he fit into this conversation? You and I spoke about him at length 2 years ago and not seen him in an Arsenal shirt since. But we're going to see it now, aren't we?
Yeah. And I remember talking to you about him 2 years ago and thinking, oh, he's a great, really, really impressive young French centre-back. He's quick. He's kind of good on the ball. He's strong in the tackle, and he is all those things. He just hasn't played for Arsenal, and it's a bit of an interesting situation because, of course, the first time he went out on loan, he went back to Saint Etienne. He played well, and there was kind of the thought, okay, now he'll come back and be incorporated into the Arsenal side, and then he didn't, and he didn't go out on loan, so he essentially wasted half a season of his career, and I think it built up a lot of kind of resentment, and that might be too strong a words from him towards the club. I don't think he felt too fussed necessarily after his kind of successful loan at Marseille about coming back here this season. I think if you had said to him, Marseille will buy you, Arsenal have accepted the fee, he'd be perfectly happy with it. But I don't think Marseille have paid enough money. And so I think Arteta is now looking at him as a competition for Ben White in the ideal scenario.
He usurps Holding as first backup.
Yeah, 100%. I think he'll be a guaranteed starter for Europa League. And as I say, with Tomiyasu, again, another injury-prone fullback at Arsenal, who'd have thought? But with Tomiyasu probably unlikely to start the season, I think Ben White will shift over to right back, and so Saliba will get that starting centre back spot. And if he performs well, I don't see any reason why he would be removed. I think that's something Arteta has shown. If the player plays well, he's willing to stick with them.
So what happens then if, presumably as it stands, Ben White's going to start right back, probably game week 1 against Palace, with Saliba against and Gabriel, Zinchenko left back possibly. Mm-hmm. So not the ideal 4. If Saliba performs really well in the first 2-3 and then Tomiyasu's back fit, what happens?
I think Tomiyasu, with his injury record for Arsenal, would probably be eased back in. And remember, we've got Europa League where we can give him minutes. There's some talk amongst some Arsenal fans about putting Ben White in midfield. I'm not too sure that centre-back to midfield transition ever really works out as well as people think, because the amount of the game that you have to see is just completely different to in midfield to what it is at the back. There's the option that Tomiyasu could go over to left back, and Zinchenko could move up into midfield. I suppose that's always an option. But if we get into that scenario, it means all of Arsenal's defenders are fit, which we both know is never going to happen, and it's only a good problem to have, as the cliche goes.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, and I think you knew this, bodies were important because you really did thin out the squad, and rightly so, with no European football last year. Do you feel like the depth of the squad has improved enough? Definitely the team looks stronger. Is the depth better now, in your opinion?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're thinking, in my mind, opening day, Nketiah, Smith Rowe, Vieira, they'll all be on the bench. Tomiyasu will probably be on the bench. Kieran Tierney, if he's fit, will be on the bench. That's a far cry from the kind of stages at last season where we had like actual children on our bench. Just we were calling up players from our youth academy to kind of fill spots on there. So yeah, I think the depth is undoubtedly improved.
Talk to us about Vieira. What is he and where's he fit into this? Because you spent a fair amount on him.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of people on Twitter, I won't claim after watching a 10-minute YouTube compilation that I know everything about him. I can try my best. So where I think he fits in is quite an interesting conversation in terms of, I think a lot of his football has been played out wide, but I think Arsenal will see him as the kind of the swap out for Odegaard, with the option that if needed, he can play out on the wing if we want to kind of take Saka off in a game and have a more creative option. I think that's where he'll be kind of used most. He won man of the match for Portugal. He won man of the match in the Euro under 21 finals last year, or in the final last year. Or he might have won player of the tournament. He won some kind of award there. And interestingly, I saw highlights of their match up against Spain, Portugal's match against Spain, and he was opposite Cucurella, and he performed pretty well against him. He beat him in a couple of duels. What I'm most worried about being his physicality. He was shrugged off a couple of times, but not to the extent where I thought this guy's going to break in half if he comes up across James Tarkowski or someone like that. So I think he's very fleet of foot. He's in all the stereotypical Arsenal have signed another playmaker ways. He's very technically adept. So yeah, I see this as a bedding in season for him. He'll probably play Europa League and be the option that when we take Odegaard off after sort of 70 minutes, if we're winning a game, he'll be the guy who comes on.
Odegaard, captain, not for
yeah.
FPL.
If you like.
Happy with that choice?
Yeah, I am. He's captain for his national side, and that's always a good thing. And it's the other interesting thing with signing Zinchenko is we've got another kind of captain of their national team in there. And I think leadership in the modern game is very different to what it was in the kind of rah Tony Adams sink 10 pints after a win.
The Tony Adams rah era.
Well, you know what I mean. The kind of you need to be shouting and pointing.
You don't need to be a chest thumper anymore. No, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Arsenal for a long time, and a lot of clubs have had leadership groups rather than kind of singular captains being the focal point for all of the kind of decisions on and off the pitch. It's like, with Spurs, James, a lot of people think Harry Kane is the captain. Wait, he's not. It's Hugo.
Mate, I get it like at least once a week.
Yeah,
exactly. So a lot of people don't even really know who the captain of a lot of these top sides is, obviously, other than Harry Maguire for hilarious reasons. So I think the shift towards that kind of silent lead by example type is more and more common in the modern game, and I think that's what Odegaard is. He's like kind of Arteta's man on the pitch. Anytime there's like a slight break in play, he'll be the one going over to the bench, receiving instructions to kind of dish it back out. And he does that in a a less shouty way, let's say, than Xhaka does, where he sometimes lets his enthusiasm for leadership get the better of him.
No,
Whereas,
you're joking.
yeah, I know, it'll be a shock to you all. Exclusive. Whereas Odegaard's a lot more level-headed, a lot more calm, and conducts himself as kind of a player beyond his years, I think. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with it.
I presume it makes him a regular, guaranteed kind of starter, which I guess, moving on to Martinelli, makes he's probably the thing that people are most nervous about. But it feels to me, in my mind, that he's clear at Smith Rowe at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, injury plays a big part in that. Smith Rowe is struggling a little bit with something, and has done for, it's not just last season, it's his whole career. He's sort of had routine muscular problems. He had it at Huddersfield as well. I think he had it when he went to Germany in his loan spell, and it's why he didn't get too much game time there either. Martinelli obviously had his own injury troubles, being laid off for near enough a year, I think. But at the moment, he's the guy who's fit. And like I said earlier, Arteta tends to stick with a guy if he's fit and he's playing well. And Martinelli's looked very good in pre-season. And I think that link with Jesus is something that Arteta values a lot. And when you've got a new signing coming in, having a fellow countryman playing right next to him is a great way to kind of sort of, I don't know what the word is, work him into the squad, essentially, and work him into the style of play as well.
From FPL, Martinelli definitely over Odegaard for you? I know you said to me originally, Odegaard was very much in your thoughts as well.
He was, for sure, and I don't think he's a bad option at all. I think he's very good. I'm hoping to see more goals from him this season. I think he got 7 last season, which is still, it's not a bad amount for a kind of creative midfielder. But again, I'm expecting the output from Arsenal's attack as a whole to increase. So I think Odegaard, alongside that, his assist numbers should go up for sure. The reason to go to Martinelli, obviously the 0.5 being cheaper, but then there are some other 6-5 options that are potentially interesting. Like, I know a lot of people like the look of Rashford. I think that's fair enough if he looks like he's going to start the season. I'm sure some
like Adam hates that. I felt like, did you get that, Suj?
Yeah, fair enough if you think he's going to start the season.
Yeah, I could have sold it a little bit better. I'll work on that. But yeah, I think the value Martinelli represents at 6 million is just a little bit better than Odegaard at that 0.5 extra.
I mean, they're clustered, right? If you look at 6.5, and you've got the 3 midfielders at 6 million in Vieira, Martinelli and Smith Rowe. Odegaard only scored 6 points more than Smith Rowe last year, and he played a lot more minutes. You're talking 1,200 more minutes.
Smith Rowe was having this freaky run where he kept coming on and scoring, didn't he?
Then Smith Rowe and Martinelli played the same amount of minutes, give or take, and Smith Rowe outscored Martinelli as well. So if he was fit, I mean, people that look at just the numbers, right? Points per minute or points per million or whatever, Smith Rowe is the one that stands out. It's just, you don't know if he's gonna start, but you've got that kind of cluster. And the same way that you have that cluster of Man City midfielders when you've got Bernardo and Grealish and whoever else, when you don't know which one, I just swerved a lot of them and wait and see what happens. And I think that's what I'm going to do with the Arsenal lot, is just swerved a lot of them until I know where the value actually is.
I think that's a valid enough point. I think the reason I'm quite happy with Martinelli, certainly to start the season, is that I think he will start the season. And I know the numbers, if you're talking points per million or points per minute or however you want to look at it, Smith Rowe comes out really, really well. But sort of like James, you were saying, he went on an incredible hot streak for a while where his finishing was absolutely ridiculous. And not that I don't think he is a good player and a good kind of potential option. I think it's a little bit of a wait and see. And I think he went away with it was the England youth tournament over the summer. So I think he went away there and only came back sort of late June or so. So he's not had the summer off. And pre-season all points towards Martinelli kind of starting the season strongly and pinch of salt, etc. But I think I'm pretty happy enough to start with him, knowing that he'll certainly, in my mind, start the first game.
Is he most likely to get hooked first? Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah,
in the sense that when you want to change the game, bring Smith Rowe, bring in Ketcher on, it's difficult to envisage Saka not playing 90 regularly, and also similar with Odegaard, probably at least 80 plus at this stage as well. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, it's fair. I think if you want a player in Arsenal's attack that's going to play 90 minutes, I think firstly with 5 subs, I think you could probably almost say that's sort of skeptical on the attackers from most kind of top 6 sides, fair. I think. I do think Saka is likely to be brought off in a fair amount of games, because what we saw towards the end of the last season is the amount of stress and weight put on his shoulders and in his legs. He was looking like, I still remember that Newcastle game, watching through my fingers behind about 16 sofas. He was like kind of dead on his feet.
I was sleeping over mine.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't know, why did I bring that up? I was dumb. I've got myself really sad now. Yeah, he was so tired towards the end of last season that I think his minutes will be watched a lot more. But yeah, so I think if any of them are going to play the most minutes, it's probably Odegaard, just because his position is probably a little bit physically less demanding than kind of what you're asking Saka to do. But yeah, minutes are obviously a valid concern. But then again, if it looks like Martinelli isn't a starter at some point in the season and Smith Rowe is, just hop across. They're priced the same, so it kind of is easy in that way.
I feel like with Saka, he'll only really come off when the game's won, because you'll even throw him the fullback and stuff when you're chasing the game. And I know there were unique circumstances around the Tottenham and the Newcastle games last season, but he ended up basically playing as an 8 in both of those fixtures, didn't he?
He can do that.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if it's something we might see more and more. I think the makeup of the squad doesn't allow for that particularly to happen at the moment. But we know you've been linked with obviously trying to buy the likes of Rafinha. So there is a suggestion, and a lot of people, hang on, but Saka plays there. And I wonder, can you see that where Saka could move to a more central midfield position?
It's something that was talked about like amongst Arsenal fans a couple of seasons ago, before he kind of really broke out and made that right wing spot his own. And he's got all the technical capabilities to do it, and he's got the driving runs and the passing ability for sure. It's just a question of, is that where he's best suited? I think wherever he is doing best and wherever you think he is going to get the most output, that's where you put him. You kind of almost mold the attack around him. That's how good I think he is. I think you will certainly see it in games. I seem to remember there was a match against Manchester City away. It was a couple of years ago. He played, or he certainly spent sort of 45 minutes in the midfield, and he looked really, really good. And he's bulked up a lot physically. So maybe that's with a mind to use him there more. Personally, I can't see it being a regular occurrence, but it's not one that I would kind of rule out completely, because it, like I say, it has been talked about a couple of seasons ago for sure.
I think like what you've got, and I know you said this to me offline and stuff, in terms of buying players who've got variety, and we have to say that I mean, Saka could basically play probably any position on the pitch, bar goalkeeper and centre back. Basically, the one thing that the midfield might lack a little bit is someone who can actually run through it. And that's what I found. And obviously, I think that's why he went there in the Tottenham game. Obviously, you were a man short, and then chasing it in the Newcastle game was a bit flat. It's hard to open the opposition up. Can he run through? And the flip is, what's best for Saka? Is it playing on the right? Yeah, probably. But is that what's best for Arsenal? Because arguably, he's your best player, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But then again, that's why I think Zinchenko will play as the left 8, because I think he brings that ability. And then you still allow Saka, you kind of take a little bit of the focus away from Saka, because that was a big problem for Arsenal last season. A lot of teams just started kicking Saka out the game. and it'll probably happen to Jarrod Bowen more and more this season. I'm sure you've noticed it as well. Teams will start targeting him and think, right, we just kind of leave a few on him early doors and just kind of hassle him constantly, and that really stifles the attack. So I think, yes, I agree with you. We do need someone to drive forward from midfield, but I'm kind of hoping that that's what Zinchenko will bring.
Yeah, I'm just picturing Antonio hovering around Bowen anytime someone goes in to kick him. It's like, nah, mate, security guard. That's his new position next year, security guard.
By the way, Adam, kicking lumps out the wide forward isn't always the best policy, especially when you take it a bit too far.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Goalkeeper we've not spoken about. He's an option, isn't he, Aaron Ramsdale? No, I suppose so. I haven't in terms of like FPL, a goalkeeper is probably the one, at least in my kind of circles, a lot of people really don't know what to do with. Like, I think everyone just defaulted to Raya at the start of the season and thought kind of, right, that's it. Like, kind of wiped their hands clean and thought, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And then they've seen Brentford conceded 4 goals in a pre-season friendly, and everyone's kind of wet the bed a little bit. People are even going to Meslier, for God's sake. I mean, so yeah. Oh, is it? Okay. I've insulted someone. That's comedic timing.
Every Correspondence Week pod we've done so far references
something that happened in the last pod, and they won't know.
The last pod, and you wouldn't know because you weren't in it. But it's just so funny that these threads are weaving their way through every single Correspondent Week. Guess who we were recording with before you?
Andy Martin.
Andy Martin, yeah.
James
Scott Meslier. That's what I'm saying.
At the moment, I'm not saying I'm going to start with him. I'm saying he's there at the moment. Anyway, back to Ramsdale. did he have a dip, Adam? Or was it that the first half of the season was so high that our expectations grew? Because I think a lot of us going into the winter period were putting our hands up, going, you know what, he's a lot better than we thought he was. Then some of it seemed to regress again a little bit. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think part of that is the defensive injuries and the defensive instability that I like his kind of drop off in form, which he definitely had, that they coincide and align pretty much in my mind. What I think was more kind of down to him personally dropping off in form is his distribution, I think, kind of tailed off a little bit towards the end of last season. He wasn't picking out those accurate kind of even mid-range passes where he was pinging it over the first line of the opposition press. He wasn't doing that with the same regularity or accuracy, and that was the more concerning thing to me as a fan, because I thought, okay, was that first half of the season, was that a complete kind of fluke or overperformance, and is this what we're going to see more? But I think based on what I've seen from his passing in pre-season, which I think you can kind of take in isolation and think, okay, yeah, this should theoretically be able to translate because the key skills are still there. That has kind of improved a lot more. There are a couple of nice little, like I was saying, pings over the first line of the press that he was doing out to Zinchenko in the Chelsea game that were much more reminiscent of kind of first half of the season Ramsdale than second half of the season.
Yeah, I just wonder, in fairness as well, obviously distribution, big thing. If obviously the opposition teams had cottoned on and realised that there's a potential threat there in terms of your build-up play. It sounds like the opposition you played at the weekend weren't at it. That's not to take anything away from you, but I think judging by Thomas Tuchel's comments, he wasn't too pleased with the way Chelsea played. So it may have been a little bit easier to play out. Yeah. I think Jesus is probably going to be the only one for me to start the season. I've not ruled Martinelli out, and I wouldn't rule Zinchenko out either. I can't see me going without Jesus, though.
And I think that's what's really interesting this year about FPL in general, is that you can almost put together 2 squads filled with like 9 or 10 completely different players, and they can both look really, really good. Like, I can sit here and say Jesus, it probably wouldn't be in my, for like positional value, top 2 He might be third if I was ranking Arsenal players, but you can have him as the only one. And I think, yeah, that makes complete and utter sense. And I see what you're doing.
I think treble up on Arsenal is reasonable. I'm seeing it a bit. And
Yeah,
I think it's fine. I think for those who are kind of know they're wild carding before the end of the month, maybe not. But I mean, at the end of the day, Adam, first 4, you'd be best on my fixture ticker. First 8, you'd be best on my fixture ticker. I just feel like potentially a little bit like what Suj said, maybe we can come back for the second or third, maybe when there's a little bit more clarity, perhaps confidence in Martinelli, or knowing when Zinchenko is going to play if or when Tierney returns. Tomiyasu might be 4.3, 4.4 and suddenly become available, for example. Not that he'd stay fit for more than a couple of weeks. I'm sure you'll clarify, Adam. Where you sit with it, Suj?
Yeah, Jesus is in, and I can't see, barring injury, him leaving at all. I can't see myself going to any others at the moment, if I'm honest with you. Only if Cucurella doesn't make that move and I decide I want a 5 million defender in there, I may go Zinchenko. But it's unlikely, if I'm honest with you. I think it's going to be Jesus and bust. That's
Martinelli versus Lingard for you, having now spoke to Adam and Mark.
If you can't compare me to Mark, that's not fair.
You're really the GOAT, aren't you, mate?
I like Martinelli as a player. I had him at the back end of last season, and he did okay for me as well. But I'd probably go Lingard. Like, I was really intrigued by what Mark was saying about their style of play and how it can open up for him. And that's me with sour grapes on Lingard as well. So I'd probably go Lingard, if I'm honest with you, over Martinelli for the start. It's going to come back to Jesus and no one.
I think Martinelli for me from the two. It's the flip. Forest, as Mark said, Forest start is tough, whereas Arsenal have the best of it. So I think, yeah, Martinelli would be the one. Do you think he's worth the 2 saving versus Saka, Adam?
Yeah, I do. Mainly because I think if you look at it in terms of there aren't any other 6 million options at Chelsea that I like in the midfield. There aren't any at City that I like in the midfield. So I just think I'd rather go for an 8 million from one of those sides and have Martinelli than do the opposite. Just kind of like spreading. It's not, I hate the word coverage. A lot of people hate the word coverage, but kind of having chips in each kind of team, I think
he might be the best 6. And we've got a lot of people still to speak to this week, but that's how I feel at the moment. I think he's probably the best. Adam, before we let you go, is there anyone in the squad who might break out this year? I'm thinking, like, in terms of Reece Nelson returning from Feyenoord, can we expect him to be involved more?
No, I think Reece Nelson is probably Europa League would be lucky for him, really. I think we signed a Brazilian player from Sao Paulo called Marquinhos. He looks pretty lively.
Has he got a permit and everything?
Yeah. He's been touring with us pre-season and all that kind of stuff. Whereas going back to Fabio Vieira still kind of looks like he's fresh out of school. Marquinhos has got a bit of bulk to him, which makes me think he might not struggle physically to adapt as much to the Premier League as can often be levelled at signings coming from Brazil. So I think certainly if for some reason, James, you want to watch Arsenal in the Europa League group stages, I don't know why you would. I think he's one that could kind of attract attention there. In terms of breakouts, realistically, that we'd see in the Premier League, I would probably say Saliba is the one. And I think watching him on the opening day is going to be a really, really good test because he obviously hasn't played in the Premier League before, but he's played for Marseille, and Marseille is an absolute bonkers fan base. He's played against PSG, gone up against Kylian.
He'll feel like he's playing 19 pre-season friendlies playing at the Emirates, right? After that.
Well, that's true. But the opening day away at Palace, whilst you can worry about the likes of kind of Elise, Eze, Zaha, all the kind of very technically gifted players they have in attack, he has played against some of the best in the world in kind of Mbappe. And what I'm not saying he was brilliant and kind of kept him in his pocket, but he held up manfully. So I think if there was going to be a breakout that people might not expect in the Premier League, it would probably be him, I'd say.
Yeah, it's difficult to see him starting regularly unless it's injury problems. That's all. But I absolutely agree with you. He's a player that everyone knows about, but no one's seen.
Yeah, it's weird
It's
like
the
that. And
reality.
everyone has really high expectations, and nobody's really seen him. But yeah, I suppose such is modern football, really.
Adam, I've got a question for you to finish. I ask all the correspondents, where do you think you finish? I'm going to ask you a different question. How many points do you think you get?
How many points did we get last season? Probably should know.
69.
69. Good number. I would say, well, I'm expecting an improvement. I'm expecting the challenge for top 4 to be one on merit and not one through failures of others. So I would say 74.
If you get 7, the reason why I asked you that question, mate, is because I knew if I asked you where you think you finish, you'd say 5th. If you finish on 74 points, you probably will finish top 4.
Yeah, I realise that.
Only once has above 72 not been enough, and that was yourselves on 75 in 16-17, I want to say.
Yeah, so it's, if anyone can do it, Arsenal can. But yeah, no, I think we'll be better this season, which is why I think the points will be high, and I expect we'll be better this season. And that's not through me being a kind of rose-tinted spectacle fan on things. I think the expectation is there, and I think pressure will be applied more because Arteta doesn't really have any excuses anymore. He's essentially got the team he wants now.
Do you genuinely think you'll get beat at Palace game week 1?
100%.
Why?
I said the same about Brentford last year, didn't I?
But why? This time feels different. We know that there were excuses, in fairness, at Brentford opening day with people absent with COVID and stuff.
We lost to Palace away last season 3-0 when we shouldn't have. We scraped a draw 2-2 at home to them with a last-minute Lacazette equaliser, I think, when we were far, far off the pace. I think Palace are a very good side, and I think Arsenal will drop points like Palace away over the course of the season. We'll probably get a draw at Brighton. These are the kind of teams that we do typically struggle against. And yeah, I think away on a Friday night is opening day of the season. In
First game of the season as well.
I just don't like it.
You think you just set up to fall, weren't you? To the extent that actually a lot of people, if it was Palace Arsenal mid-season, I think like, oh yeah, first game Friday night, psychological, thinking about obviously what happened at Brentford and stuff. Do you think there is a psychological evening game problem? Because when you do look at your results of the games that you lost last year, there is a trend that the majority of them are like 5:30 kickoffs or later.
I think a lot of that is, especially towards the back end of last season, that kind of spirals and becomes a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. I think as soon as we hit that rough patch towards the kind of spring time of the season, I think it just, the writing was on the wall for us not really making top 4. It's hard to say whether there's a psychological problem. I think the issue would be is that we didn't last season have a lot of winners in our side. Like the only thing that a lot of those people had ever won with Arsenal, well, the only thing still is the FA Cup. But now we're bringing in people like Zinchenko and Jesus who have won the Premier League. Jesus has won it something like 4 times, hasn't he? And how often do you see a side who finished 5th last season go out and sign a 4-time Premier League winner who is kind of in his peak age? So I think having that kind of extra experience from the signings, as well as having a team who has gone through what happened last season before, so kind of knows what it feels like, and certainly knows sure as hell they don't want it to happen again. I think that should help. For the fans, there is definitely that ingrained thing. I know I'm guilty of it myself, which is why I think we'll lose on the opening day.
At the
James,
time
you're
of
talking about
Go on,
the
Sid.
night games in winter. It's bloody dark at 3 o'clock on a Saturday anyway. In this time.
No, that's true.
When
But
we get into December, you're playing on the lights.
you know what I
3 or
mean?
4:30.
Like Brentford,
But-
Newcastle, Palace, Tottenham. He does roll where it stays in your psyche and mind. I'm sure there's another one I'm forgetting as well. I was going to say, Adam, how many of the correspondents? I haven't got all the predictions yet. How many of them do you think were predicted to finish top 4?
Overall, I would say probably 3.
None.
Really?
I was going to say 0.
I'm quite surprised by that.
So am I, because I actually think, in terms of your overall summary, in terms of expectation that Arsenal will get more points, I agree. And I think if you miss out, it will be because Chelsea and Tottenham both also improve. But I don't think there's a guarantee that happens. And I actually think Arsenal could well finish top 4 this year.
The one reason why I am sort of not as pessimistic as I was last season with regards to finishing top 4 is because I don't think the improvement for Tottenham and Chelsea will be as much as others seem to. Probably more on the Tottenham side. I think Chelsea are still a little bit of an unknown to a lot of extents. But yeah, I'm not sure whether Tottenham have improved as much as I'm seeing people talk about them as potentially being title challengers. I think that's a bit strong. They've
Well,
improved.
we'll see what Ricky says on Saturday, won't we, mate?
Well, that's why I'm interested. I'm interested to listen to that.
I think I know Ricky's going to poo-poo that, mate.
Listen,
I think for any of us, and to be honest, at the moment, look, at the end of the day, there was 2 points difference between my team and your team. And the essential difference is you didn't win a game of football in game week 36, which could have meant you finished like 5, 6, 7 points clear of us, right? So the gap between us is small, and the gap between Liverpool and Manchester City is massive. And let's be honest, the gap was close to Chelsea because Chelsea didn't really give a toss for the last 8, 9 games of the season, is a reality as well. So I think Chelsea has the potential to possibly nosedive quite badly, but they're also, in my opinion, right now, the only likely contender to push Man City or Liverpool. For either of our teams to be involved, Adam, we need both City and Liverpool to both lower their standards significantly. And it's hard to foresee that.
Yeah, 100%. But I also don't see the leap from below being enough to worry either of our teams about dropping out of the top 5, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we get to the start of the season. Yeah.
I don't think my
the
team
top
or
6
your
will be-
team will finish outside the top 5, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I just think the gap between the top 6 and the rest will get bigger this year. Last year was a little bit of a who wants it more, because no one seemed to want it. This year, I think the top 6, including Manchester United, will be comfortably clear, being like 5, 6, 7 points clear of the chasing pack. I don't think there's any threat to you guys this year.
Would you rather not be in Europa?
No, because everyone talks down about European football, but then you don't have a season with it. And you're like, I really miss having a game on a kind of, even if it's a Thursday nights on Channel 5 or whatever.
BT
I
Sport,
do,
mate. BT Sport. don't
everything's on BT Sport. I mean, I am going to have to suffer with listening to Robbie Savage commentate over Arsenal games, which is almost enough to put me off. But no, I think it will be
Thursday night, you'd be lucky.
worry.
You'd be lucky to get Robbie Savage, mate.
Dear. That's a low blow. But no, I think it's a good chance to utilize the squad depth that we have now accumulated and see what the likes of kind of Vieira, Marquinhos,
Nicholas
Pepe, if he's still here,
Ketcher.
Saliba and Ketcher, exactly. See what these guys are about and create that kind of competitive environment that will only help, hopefully, push us on domestically.
Yeah, I would never not want my team to be in European competition.
No,
I'd happily take it. Yeah, I think what you had to do, which we've covered, is you had to beef up the numbers in the squad, and some of it's been subtle with the likes of Saliba and Nelson coming back, for example. What's happening, Maitland-Niles? Is he going to hang around? Go? It's another body, isn't it?
It's another body, but I think it's another body that probably wants to leave. And I think if we can get 10 million, 15 million for him, he's perfectly good enough to play for a Premier League side. So yeah, I think I would hope.
It's perfectly good enough to play in Europa League as well. Lukonga, we haven't mentioned and stuff. Like, there's
Yeah,
depth there.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think Maitland-Niles will probably leave.
All right, Adam, thanks so much for that, mate. I would say,
Indeed.
no, I can't bother.
You were going to say you would say good luck, but you can't even be bothered to say that.
Adam, I always say it to you, mate. Good luck for the season.
Oh,
Indeed. And
thank you.
Thank you once again for joining us. Just tell the listeners where they can find you on the old Twitter.
You can find me at 35who, spelt out in letters. Because I'm an idiot.
Perfect. And you can now head over to the app and unfollow all the other correspondents that gave you no chance at top four. In the meantime, James, where are we headed to next on our journey around the Premier League clubs?
We're going from South London to West London. Speak to Brentford, FPL dummy Tom. Listen, don't worry, he's going to come and tell everyone Brentford's going to win the league, mate. So with him, it's not a case of which Brentford assets, it's just which three.
Yeah, exactly.
Which three is he actually going for?
I think he has the tweet with too many Brentford players selected daily when he's just tinkering between the lot of them. But really looking forward to speaking to Tom on the next episode as well. So wherever you are listening to the podcast, you know what you got to do. Subscribe, hit the bell, get notified as soon as the rest of the Correspondent Week pods go live. 25% of the way through, James. On we go. Stay safe. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers, Adam. Cue music, please, man. Sharp.